Going to keep it running. So I'm here with Becca Hoare. As promised, I did mention previous times, loads of times before, that I was going to travel around Europe and speak to as many professional dancers as possible, but there was no better place to start than with Becca, because I've known Becca for 6 or 7 years. She trained at KS Dance and has since then gone on to work in 2 different companies, one in Bucharest, she'll tell you herself I'm sure, and also SemperOper Dresden. Now I've managed to spend the day in Dresden watching company class, watching rehearsals, and I honestly, of all the companies that I've enjoyed watching in rehearsal, this has been a vastly different experience where actually all the dancers push themselves far and beyond every single rehearsal, and the fact that they go through every single 8 counts a million times, for me, demonstrates to me exactly why I do my job, is to make sure that you guys, you dancers, are prepared for the careers that are ahead of you, because as we discussed before, I think that training in college and school is one thing, but then the amount of time you're asked to do something and the demands that are placed on you daily as a dancer, especially prepping for Swan Lake as you are at the moment, is vastly out of the spectrum of any kind of training you do at school. Wouldn't you agree? So what we're here to talk to you about is how Becca got this job, first and foremost, because it's a fantastic achievement. Everybody I know and that knows you is really proud of you. So that's genuine. That is true. And then to bring to you some real life information on how to look after yourself. Like how is this, amazing opportunity? How do I keep that opportunity? You guys are on essentially contracts for life type thing, but you've got to stay healthy, you've got to stay fit, and you've got to keep looking your best. And I know too many dancers that dance through niggles and have had injuries and come back and do the same thing again. So I'm going to ask Becca a load of questions. Some I've already been given before, some I'm literally going off the top of my head and winging this completely. But Becca, how old are you, first of all, and how long have you been dancing for, and where did you train? That's what I want to know. That's it's really important that people know that, is because this, to get to where she's at now, has taken, people don't just walk out of college. That is 1 in a million, if I'm honest. People don't just walk out of college and walk straight into those jobs. So how much training have you done? What have you learned after training that is so crucial to where you're at now?
So I'm 24 now. I started dancing at the age of 2. So I've been dancing for a while.
Long time.
Yes. Started with ballet and then went into other styles. Initially my training was with recreational classes. I then moved into the associate programs from the Royal Ballet and also the Cicchetti Society.
Okay.
I then went to Elmhurst to train from the age of 14. I did 3 years there, and then I graduated with KS Dance.
Where you were there for?
I was there for 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah,
okay.
2 years.
So you were 19. You were 19. Were you 19 when you graduated?
I was 19 when I graduated.
So
yeah.
Again, people often ask me the questions because they come and see me with regards to their daughter or their son who's 12,
Yeah.
and they say, is it how important? Does it matter whether I'm 19, 20, 21 getting into these Premier Ballet Companies, and actually you're 24 and you've just got here. You're 23 at the time.
Yeah.
So it's a progression, and it's really important to remember that progression. A lot of people follow the same channels, but as Becca will tell you, some people have a very, very smooth ride and then have some bumps sort of later on, whether it's injury, whether it's, relationships, whatever. You've had quite a smooth ride through school. You had some good places, had some ups and downs there, but the real challenge was kind of later professionally.
Yeah, sure.
So you think you're going through the works now. It is preparing you mentally, physically, yes, but you're still going to have those ups and downs as a professional dancer. You've made it, but there's more to come, isn't there?
Yeah.
So
much more.
So you got your first job at 19. Where was that?
So I got my first job at the Bucharest National Opera House, Romania National Ballet. I was hired for Swan Lake. I auditioned on a Thursday and I started work there the following Tuesday.
Okay, so that's a quick turnaround.
was a quick turnaround.
No time to go home.
I did go home actually.
You went home that time?
I went home on the weekend. I had to pack.
Okay, yeah.
But I'd been auditioning for a very long time, coming up to 2 years, and I really.
So you weren't 19 when you got that job.
I was 19.
You were still 19. So
Yeah.
right, okay. So you you graduated Case Dance. You were 18.
Yeah.
So you was coming up on 2 years that you were searching around for a.
Yeah, I mean, because I auditioned my whole graduate year.
Yeah.
And then after graduating, which is normally when people will go to their first position, I didn't have one. I continued to audition among, trying to sustain myself and my training.
And how was that? Because this is obviously science and dance, and this is like talking a lot. I talk a lot about strength training and fitness, and obviously the touch quite a lot on the mental health side of things as well, and keeping yourself physically and mentally prepared to go and do these things.
Yeah.
How tough was it being out of school and then keeping yourself in shape? And how much do you think, if you could take anything that you knew about the body and physiology and like keeping yourself fit now, and you had that knowledge then, how important do you think, how much do you think that would have helped
massively you? If I'm honest, I don't know how I did it. I don't know how I got a job in the condition that I probably was in at that point. I had 5 jobs at the time of getting this job.
Right.
Different jobs, waitress, lifeguard, like all sorts. Trying to pay for these auditions. I did a lot of work in the gym, but you can't replicate that training.
Absolutely not. And in terms of like your specific dance related exercise out of college, no dancing job, how many classes were you doing a week? Like, what were you doing, any, or were you just simply going off?
Not really. I had access to my old studio.
Okay.
Where I first learned to dance. I would probably go twice a week, 3 or 4 in a good week.
And would you argue that's not enough? Would you?
Nowhere near enough. No, absolutely not. Like I said, I honestly don't know how I did it, but for about 6 weeks prior to me getting my job, I was lucky enough to be invited. I was welcomed to take class with Ballet Wales or Ballet Cymru. So they were kind enough it was near my family home, so they were kind enough to let me train with them, and that's really what clinched it for me.
Okay.
Because there's my audition at Bucharest, we had everything in there. We all virtuosity. We had to do fouettes one by one. We had to do jeté manège one by one.
So you had to be incredibly well drilled in your ballet and maintain that level of athleticism and coordination. That a couple of classes a week, having been full time in training. Wasn't
weren't there.
I know your third year, and you were doing quite a few shows at Swan Lake and stuff like that. So again, going from doing that to just not doing that many classes is going to be tough for anyone. So I think what I'm driving at with this, and what Becca's, I can guarantee Becca's going to agree with me on this, is that learn as much as about your the needs of your dancing. Try and find out as much about the virtuosity and the things you want to go and do, so that you could are then best prepared to go to an audition perhaps, and keep yourself know your craft definitely. And that's always something that rings so true, whether it's strength coaching or whether it's dancing. Keep your eye in the game, I think is you got to stay on it. And that's hard for a long period of time, so that definitely has made you a weathered dancer in terms
9 months.
But if you could take a piece of information about how you do things now and give it to your 18, 19-year-old self, what sort of things stand out?
One piece?
No, not one piece. Any couple of things, like
be the epitome of resilience.
Okay.
Would probably be my top one.
So the knocks, you know, the rejections, the emails that say nah, the emails that say no.
And you just write back like, okay, I'll try again in a few months. Thanks very much.
But you do say that. You should say that. You know,
Yeah.
you have to make them aware that of how much you want to do this.
Why should they see you over the literally thousands or hundreds of thousands of other dancers that they're contacting?
And everybody's
from?
good.
Why should they remember you?
Good, right?
Everyone is good. Why should they remember you?
Hmm.
Because you emailed 6 times and you always follow up, so they're going to recognise your name eventually. Okay. Without being annoying.
So another question that's come up sort of links to that, which is, you know, okay, I've had an injury, or I've got this thing that I'm a good dancer, I want a job in classical ballet, and I lack a little bit of strength, or I lack a little bit of turnout, and you know, or I've had this injury and now I'm worried about my injury. And you know, you've had an ankle sprain. We were just talking about this. Of how Becca did, it's really nominal. Like it's so just like slipping over, literally just slipping over in the street kind of thing. What about those processes where you've got a niggle or something's painful? Like what if you could take something that you know now and give it to your college self when you had an injury or something like that? What would you say? Like, you know, what about that process and the recovery and trying to get back to where you were and better would you pass on to your...
I mean, stick with it sounds so basic, but trust the process of what you go through with an injury. You do need to listen to yourself, and it's much more accepted now to, you know, it's okay if you've got a niggle or an injury, and working through it whilst guarding it can almost 9 times out of 10 could give you more problems, whether it's in that area or a repercussional problem.
And what we're starting to see now is companies and directors and school directors be so much more understanding and because at the end of the day it costs the company or the school or whoever or you money if you're off and unfit, so they want you to be on, but that knowledge about it's going to take longer if you just keep pushing through it. You know, if you sprained your ankle and you tried to keep dancing, A, you probably couldn't, and B, how much longer are you going to be out for?
So much worse in the long run. So without exploiting the fact, listening to your body and trusting that when you feel, you know, you've hit a limit and you need to have something dealt with, that's what you have to do. There's no other way about it. But also being proactive in your rehab. I worked with someone once, and there's very few injuries where you can be completely inactive, your whole body. So say you've got an ankle injury, what about the rest of the body? That doesn't need to go off for that entirety of time, even if you're on crutches.
Absolutely.
Or, you know, there are very few injuries which do take you out, so you don't need to let everything else go because you've got this situation.
And how important what comes on top of that, I think, is taking what you think you know and sort of putting that to bed for a second and go, okay, I need to listen to someone. And trust that process. Where, you know, as I often say to my clients and people that have injuries and that I work with, even the dancers that are fine, is that there's more than one way to sort of to sling a hook sort of thing. You know, there are a number of processes work, but if you stick to one and you trust one, and you keep all aspects of having all the balls in the air, then that means. You know, you've got a better chance of being at a better place or even stronger when you come back. You know.
Accept advice.
Yeah, so, you know, that's a really, really valuable point, and something I say often is kind of whoever you're working with, whether it's myself, whether it's another ballet teacher, whether it's you're a rehab coach or a physiotherapist, is if you really want something to get better, if you've been given some advice, then if you really want something to improve, whether it's turnout or your feet or whether it's you know, it's a greater amount for those health practitioners out there. If it's a greater amount of ankle dorsiflexion so that you can land properly and not hurt your knee, then you've got to stick with that process, because the body doesn't just change overnight. And I think what I'm really interested in talking to you about as on top of this is, and you're the perfect person for this this sort of line of questioning, is that we see so many young dancers that want it yesterday. And there are so many good dancers that I spoke to one 14, 15-year-old girl, and she said, but there's so many 12-year-olds that are good. There are so many, and that girl's saying there's so many 9-year-olds that are good. But it doesn't necessarily matter. This is a long process, and I'm sure at one point you were the best in the business when you were, I don't know, however old, but then that changes all the time. And when it comes to the professional business, I think everybody's good. Everybody's on the level playing field, and even the best dancer might not get recognised. Is that true?
Sure. I mean, did you hear my director said today, your body doesn't change overnight, so do something about it. You have to do something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing's going to happen.
It comes back to what Becca said, is being proactive. I see a lot of people come into the studio with me, and I take them through a lot of basics. And funnily enough, I'm going to do Becca tomorrow, so she's in for a right treat. And it's simple stuff that, like, you think, oh, it's so rudimentary, it's so basic, why am I doing this? But sometimes those little things are going to help you recover or get back from an injury, or even get you a job if you work on them and stick with them. So that brings me on to, like, what was the clinching moment for you where you realised, kind of like, right, I've got this opportunity, which was to move companies and all that sort of thing, and you're kind of in a place of limbo. You don't know whether you're going to get it or not. Does that come back to resilience as well? Does that?
Massively.
So whether it's injury, whether it's auditioning, whether it's even in a company and you're up for a role. Any
changes, any setbacks, any moving, anything that's moving forward, changing in any way really. Resilience is key. There's no two ways about it. I also found, you were saying before about people of different ages being better than you, or you can see other things around you. No comparison. There should be no comparison. If you're going into an audition and you're comparing yourself to everyone around, forget it. Go home, because there is no comparison. No two people are the same, and there will always be someone younger, who you feels better than you. There will always be someone with a higher leg, with a higher jump, with more turns. There's always going to be. But what do you have?
What's going to be your thing? Yeah.
So you can work on your turnout, and you can work on your feet, and you can work on X, Y, Z, and you should. Whilst not forgetting that you've got beautiful assets as well. Whoever, everyone does.
Yeah.
So it's playing to those strengths, because everyone has something that someone else doesn't have.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to put to the table.
Yeah. So to bring that sort of together and say, once you get into these companies and everything, there's still very much jostling for position, and there's still a lot of moving around, people getting cast in parts, and we know to expect that. But as far as I'm concerned, based upon what I've seen here in Dresden, and knowing Becca, like, this is her dream. So this is like, whether she's called a ballet or principal, it doesn't matter. Like, this is kind of the pinnacle. This has been a big work in progress. You're 24, and now it's like, right, let's keep going with this for as long as I can. Let's stay on the crest of the wave. Yeah. However, my big thing when I go in and watch companies is, what does everybody do before, after, during class, during rehearsal, during the day, that keeps their bodies ticking? And I think that a lot of sports science, and this is really one I got a question about this from health practitioners and sports staff and support staff, is, I'm watching you go in and do class. Is that really preparing you for the demands of your day? Like, sometimes, and I think we have to be, for anybody listening who is a physiotherapist or a sports scientist or a strength and conditioning coach, is you have to understand this art form before you try and make too many radical changes to the people in it. You can make them stronger, you can make them better, you can make them healthier, but you have to go about it in a very certain way. We're talking about an art form, we're talking about culture, we're talking about tradition. And, you know, have you come across any situations where perhaps health practitioners' approaches absolutely kind of been like, I can't do that because this is ballet and that's not how we work? And then have you also come across anybody that's been like, okay, that's really left field, but I like that, you know? Do you think that people like me have to be very careful about how we enter this, or do you think we should just literally like pull people to the side and look, right, you know, you're struggling there, do we need to sort you out?
Yeah.
It's a daily dilemma for me, so go on.
In two ways, all guns blazing won't work, in my opinion.
And just for those of you who don't know, kind of dance science in its entirety, and strength and conditioning inside dance, and even physiotherapy to a certain extent, is actually light years behind sport, in the sense that, you know, clubs and professional teams pay big bucks for the best healthcare staff, whereas sometimes in the past ballet has seen it as like, well, we'll have a couple of physios, we'll have a massage therapist, and we might send somebody to a doctor. But you guys are doing 6 hours of rehearsals a day.
Yeah.
Surely you need someone in there.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, there is a lot with regards to what we know now in the sports science world that is lacking in the ballet world, and it's much more accepted now. New techniques and you know, new ways of figuring out how to maintain ourselves. But it's been going on for hundreds of years, and if they can do it, we can do it. And whilst I would agree with that to a certain extent, because it builds you tough, you know.
Yeah, of course. And that's the interesting thing, is that we've got these like really robust people, these dancers and these ballerinas and stuff, and they're brilliant at what they do, but a lot of them fight through pain and don't say.
Yeah.
And a lot of time people are placing themselves at risk, even though they've done it 100 times before. So like I said to you an example earlier, where one guy, he's dead strong, he's come in, he's a strong dancer, he's a good dancer, and he's, let's say he's high up in the company, whoever.
Yeah.
He comes in and he does exactly what he's done every day for 2 years that he's been in this particular position. It only takes one day for him to have not prepared, or it be accumulation of a number of days of not preparing for something bad to happen. So I think the approach that I take, and I'm going to ask you this, is rather than, let's say, right, we're going to strength train all these dancers so that they're dead strong and they're lifting like this, let's spin it on its head slightly, regress it slightly, and go, how about we make sure everybody is at an optimal level to do their best each day, and to place themselves as little risk of hurting themselves as possible? Does that seem like a more worthwhile approach?
For sure. I mean, we can't be all guns blazing all the time. We're human beings. That it just won't work. There's no longevity in that, and that's what we want. We want to be doing what we do for as long as possible, with as few injuries as we possibly can, and try and enjoy it along the way. So I think it's important what you say, that it's optimizing our potential, as opposed to a constant maximizing of potential, like all the time.
And then making sure that you're at your peak for when you do want to perform. So you've had a couple of opportunities recently to do Symphony in C, and I'll let you tell everybody about that a little bit, very briefly. Did you prepare yourself any differently for that? You know, knowing that you were going to have those opportunities. Be perfectly honest, because knowing you, I know what the answer might be. Which is another reason I'm here is to educate people that are in companies and say, look,
very honest.
You're a brilliant dancer. You're very, very strong. You're very robust. You've had these, but we want now. And now you're at this point. Let's keep that. Let's make sure that nothing risky happens,
No,
or let's make sure that
nothing
you
takes it away.
let's make sure you're at your absolute best, so that when the point comes around where they might be casting something and you want it,
Yeah.
you're even better than you ever have been.
Yeah.
How do we keep that ball ticking? So, you know, did you prepare yourself any differently for Symphony in C, or not? Like, you know, if you did it, psychologically, did you? Mentally, did you? When you knew you had, you know, something on you that you had to do, or were you very confident that you could pull it off?
No, I wasn't overtly confident that everything would be fine. Definitely not. And I actually went in. I was informed that I would go in for a particular role the day before. I had half an hour rehearsal the morning of the show, and then that was in. So there wasn't an awful lot of time for
any kind of prep,
other than the nap I took before the show.
Yeah, exactly.
To calm myself down.
But funnily enough, you know, what's your, you know, that's interesting, you know, talking about recovery and napping. Now, I know my place of work, I do a sleep log. Okay. And we track people's sleep. Mm-hmm. And often we get these patterns where people are so can be completely absorbed in what they're doing and worried that they don't sleep.
No.
But do you ever struggle? Do you take that part of your recovery that probably helps you? Your sleep is important, you know.
Massively.
Yeah.
It takes a lot for me not to sleep, and actually, I think the last time I didn't really sleep was a few days prior to my meetings here.
Okay. Okay.
I didn't sleep a few days before, and I certainly didn't sleep the night of, just the excitement.
But do you think that it's because you've got that stone's unturned, and you take that part of your recovery seriously? You like your sleep, and you do sleep, and you do recover. Do you think that helps you? Do you think that?
Massively. I'm not a friendly face if I've not had a good night's sleep, and it's
you're not
too
your,
important.
not your best, exactly.
No, it's too important. I will nearly always have a nap before a performance. I mean, not directly before, hours before. And I do need a good 8 hours, and because you just have to pay too much the next day if you don't do it. It's not worth it.
It's so true. So, you know, Becca's talked a little bit there about like recovery methods, and part of the point of this whole series really of videos, and although this is like a long kind of introduction video, is we're going to film some really simple guided steps to making your hips and knees and backs feel at their best. And once you've danced, how then to get the most out of your recovery? You know, there's a lot of science out there now about how we best use a foam roller, and what we wear at night, and what we do with our body post-exercise. And that will be completely alien probably to yourself as well. That's deeply ingrained into the bed of sports science knowledge that dance goes nowhere near. And I'm trying to draw that out for you guys, and I'm going to show Becca, and because Becca's got the body and I don't for ballet, she's going to demonstrate it to you, and we're going to talk it through. So we're going to look out for a few videos on foam rolling, some exercises to warm your hips up, because do you have these days where one day something works, one day something doesn't? Is it literally that inconsistent? Or how great would it be, and how great would it be to a point where you know that you do X, Y, and Z, and that's it?
No, it would be brilliant. It would be brilliant to have all the answers. We all deal with minor niggles day to day, whether it's muscularly or wherever else it comes from. But certainly after a performance, when you're performing on a regular basis, like we referred to Symphony in C previously, after that first show, when I was so incredibly tense the next day, I literally felt like I'd been in a car crash because everything was killing me. Yeah. And you still got to work the next day, so it's how to get those cogs going in the right way. It's getting yourself
to 50% of that feeling rather than feeling all of that, you know. Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in some follow-up videos, and it's really important, you know, if you're dead interested in anything that comes off the back of that, please send us more, because we're going to do a whole host of, because probably not even just on this trip, I'm only here for 3 days, but like on a few occasions, and whack these videos out. Look, you know, we're going to talk stability, we're going to talk strength, flexibility, we're gonna find you some new range of motion that you've never been through before.
That would
Like
be
guarantee we are, and it's important now that anybody who watches these videos that when you get to a professional point, it's still so important to learn. And I think that from when I sort of last saw you dance, which is like 5 years ago, you've improved. Like, you were good, and now you're really blooming good. You know, like, you've definitely improved. So, how do we do that? And how come someone like me help? And if you are a strength and conditioning coach and you want to get into dance sciences, you have to sit here and have these conversations with your athletes and with your dancers, and you've got to get to know them, because they're not just kind of ticking bombs of physical ability that can just explode onto stage. Like, there's artistry, and there's technique, and there's aesthetics to consider too.
Yeah,
so
massive.
we've not even touched on that.
No.
But Becca, like,
go
thank
on.
you. And we've put this through like straight in one take. I was expecting to have to edit this out. I probably edit
Maybe
this.
not.
Probably edit this bit now. But I might just leave it in because that, you know, as I say. So thank you so much for
You're
first of all
welcome.
having
Thank
me.
you.
If you are ever get the chance to be in Germany and come to Berlin or that area, travel down to Dresden and watch this company, because from what I saw today, they are so on the money. Like, all of the dancers, it's so, and you agree with me, like, I've seen a number of companies. I've been watching ballet since I was 4 or 5 years old, and it was a joy to be in the studio for 4.5, 5 hours watching class and rehearsal. And that seems like a long time, but for me it just went ticking by. So we're going to do some videos. We're going to shut up. Thank you, Becca. You're going to see more of Becca, a lot more of Becca. You're going to see what she can do, how strong she is at this point, and how she's going to keep improving, keeping herself healthy beyond that. So thanks, Becca.
You're welcome. Thanks.